Hello, everybody. It is a beautiful, cloudy, rainy Sunday afternoon here at the 305, and what better way to spend it than to dissect old movie classics with your best friend. Speaking of which, I am your host, Jonathan Irons, and today with me is my perennial guest, Theron Seckington. He is a film studies scholar and noted Western enjoyer.
Well, sure. Sure, all of that's true.
I will give you a different introduction every time we do this, by the way.
Oh, okay. You really hype me up, like, a lot. Like, it really... You keep assigning me credentials I do not possess, and I just want the audience to understand that.
You know, they're aspirational credentials.
If you listen to these on a long enough arc, some of them will be true.
Yes, exactly. So today we are watching number 7 in the Criterion Collection out of, obviously, 305. This one is called High Noon. It is a Western. It is from the 60s, I know. Where was the date on this thing? 1952, actually.
So, already way off.
Yeah. And it stars Gary Cooper and Grace Kelly. This is, at least according to everything I've read, a very well-known communist Western, if you listen to one side of it. Theron, do you have any familiarity with this movie?
No, I've never seen it. I'm really looking forward to it. Cool.
I have also never seen it. I hadn't even heard of it until I picked it up through Criterion. It's a beautiful Laserdisc. It's a nice fold-out. They've got, an audio commentary by UCLA professor Howard Suber, who did a handful of other Criterion commentaries. It's also got the theatrical trailer right at the end that we'll see, and storyboards, original notes from the writer on the story, and the complete text of The Tin Star, the short story on which High Noon is based. So I'll be very curious to dig into those. Knowing what you know, do you have any expectations for this movie, Theron?
I mean, I expect it to be very, very good. I remember when we were still doing movie night when I lived in Chicago, that we all said, we've got to watch a Western, and it kind of like, we settled on The Searchers, which I also really enjoyed, but when I was Googling frantically, like, best Western ever, this one was reliably in those lists, and so this was a top contender when we were all like, we must watch a Western.
Great. Well, that is exciting. And a funny coincidence that we ended up watching The Searchers starring John Wayne, because we'll talk about this later, there's kind of a weird rivalry almost around this movie High Noon between Gary Cooper and John Wayne, both personally on an acting level and politically, as it turns out. But with that, we will go ahead and take our usual break, watch this movie, and we will be right back for you folks.
Doctor, will you tell these fools I'm not crazy? Make them listen to me before it's too late! Listen to me. Please listen. If you don't, if you won't, if you fail to understand, then the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
Join us next week for a special Halloween episode of the 305, featuring Don Siegel's 1956 science fiction horror classic, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Well, here we are, fresh off of seeing what I would call a Western masterpiece, High Noon.
Yeah, what a movie.
Yeah, we were both very impressed by just about everything. And understandably so. I did notice that in reading about it, the film was nominated for 7 Academy Awards and managed to win 4 of them: actor, editing, score, and song. That theme song that we talked about.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first 25 films selected for preservation by the United States National Film Registry in 1989.
They were like, well, High Noon's got to be in there, obviously. And everyone said, yeah, obviously.
And, I can't claim that Criterion had anything to do with it, but it looks like they first printed this in 1986. So at the very least, a timely inclusion. Why don't we talk about the plot first? Just a refresher here, we've got Will Kane, who is a sheriff of a small western town. He's been married. Go ahead.
He's a marshal, which is actually, I think,
a little different.
Kind of a bigger deal.
Yeah, good point. So he is a marshal. It is his last day as marshal, and that is because he's getting married to his new wife, Amy, and getting ready to ride off into the sunset.
Yeah, and importantly, she's a Quaker, so she's a pacifist, which is why he had to quit. Right.
And they're going to go start a new life together running a shop. We see him renounce this right about the time that some former criminals show up, or current criminals, I guess.
Current criminals, but former, racketeers. It sort of implied they ran the town.
Yeah. So anyway, they pull back into town right as this is happening, and it turns out that years ago, Will had put away the leader of the gang, Frank Miller, to a nice long jail sentence, only for them to overturn his conviction by a jury and set him free. And he is now back for revenge. So the whole movie, it actually takes place roughly in real time, which is pretty cool. It's all about waiting until that noon train that Frank Miller is going to arrive on and his wife is getting ready to leave on. And we get to see how Will's efforts to rally the town around him pan out, which is, of course, not so good. Theron, how did you feel about the plot and story?
I think setting it in, I've read some stuff that says, well, it's not technically real time. We'll call it real time.
Yeah,
I think that close enough to real time. That adds to a lot of tension. It's a real slow burn. He's just going through and his allies are disappearing one by one. And it's really fascinating seeing people either say why don't you just leave the town? Wouldn't that solve everything? Or some people are like, well, actually, I had a lot more business when that gang ran the town, so I'm okay either way.
Yeah.
And just seeing people justify their decisions to him.
Right. Yeah, he managed to get one person right off the bat who in the end also turns away from him once he realizes that he's the only person on Will's side.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get to see a whole range of responses. People saying, they've got kids and family to worry about, that they don't want the town to be known for this kind of violence. There's almost a tourism argument being had in the church scene. Yeah. And of course, as you mentioned, his new wife, Amy, is very hardline pacifist and doesn't want any of this to happen. She's all ready to get out of there. Well, I believe I remember Will pointing out that the reason he doesn't think he can just leave is that he feels like no matter what, Frank Miller and his gang are going to find him, and he's just going to have to leave the next town that they go to. Yeah,
and that he would rather... He'd rather fight them here where he's got some friends and allies and he knows the town. But
yeah.
In the end, it turns out he's all out of friends. But I think it could be argued his knowledge of the town really plays to his advantage.
Yeah.
During
eventually.
during the last gunfight, which is really honestly one of the best gunfights I've ever seen on the screen.
Yeah, same here. And you pointed out part of that is just that it's realistic in that there's a whole lot of missed shots.
Yeah, they're firing at pretty extreme range for the guns of the time, and they barely hit them. Most of the time that people are hit, it's either by complete accident or it's very close range, or there's an ambush.
Right, right. And of course, in the end, he ends up being saved to some extent by his wife, who comes in at the last second because she's leaving on the train. She hears the gunshots, and then finally has this moment of realization that she needs to go back and be with her husband.
Yeah, she decides his life is more important than her beliefs. And kills one of the gunmen, and another one takes her hostage, and she gouges his eyes, and that gives Kane a clear shot.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that she chose his life over her beliefs, because in a way it's reverse from what Will Kane has been doing this whole time. He feels like his beliefs are worth more than his life in a way. And their new life. So that's it's interesting to have that role reversal be the thing that saves the day. Something that struck me about the plot and the dialogue was just how pessimistic the whole movie was. Because as these people are turning him down, they really are just being very cynical about beliefs. And every one of them is challenging him on, essentially, why do you need these ideals? You would just be better off if you left them alone.
Well, almost everybody wants something from him.
Also true.
His other deputy really wanted to be recommended to be the marshal, and Kane tells him, and almost everyone he meets tells him, you've got some growing up to do before you can be a marshal. You're a good shot, you're a good fighter, but you're not a man, is the way they put it. You're just an overgrown boy.
Yeah. Oh, what did you think of the scene with Lon Chaney?
I mean, what about it?
For some reason, to me, the dialogue was the most kind of captivating in that scene, and really got to the heart of it in a way. I wrote down two of the lines that he said, which were, and this was in the trailer, people got to talk themselves into law and order before they do anything about it. And maybe because that's deep down inside, they really don't care. And after a little more back and forth, he just flat out says, it's all for nothing, Will. It's all for nothing. Implying that even his life up to this point has been essentially a waste of time being this marshal, because in the end, nobody really cares what he does one way or the other.
Yeah, I guess he's the only person who doesn't try to get something out of the marshal.
Really just wants him to save his life in a way. I mean, it's clear that they're old friends, right?
Yeah, that was the previous marshal.
I see.
Of the town.
And even he is this is pointless. I suppose I was hanging on to some of those words because I had read about this movie beforehand, and therefore got the sort of backstory about the writing, which I'd like to talk about now. So we had the director, Stanley Kramer, and the writer, Carl Foreman. They were sort of the main duo on this movie.
I thought the director was Fred Zinneman.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
Stanley
Kramer, producer, Zinneman, director. I'm so right about who was kind of leading this, though, in terms of Kramer and Foreman. And they, I guess just as an aside, this movie was put out by United Artists, which had actually just gone into sort of a new phase because they were really struggling, and they just installed a new management team that turns things around, and they essentially started financing independent movies. And so my understanding from reading about it briefly was that Stanley Kramer brought this movie to them and said, look, I've got this Western I'm interested in doing with Foreman. And they said sure, and it turned out to be their first hit, and was extremely profitable. What was the number that you came up with earlier?
It earned back about 5 times its budget, which is pretty significant.
And not a particularly high budget either. It was in today's dollars, about $7.5 million, I think.
Yeah, $7.5 million-ish in today money. I don't know how that compares to movies of the time in terms of budget.
That's true. I didn't look into that. Hopefully someone else can look at that at home. This movie as far as the writing goes, Carl Foreman, he came up with this idea about the real-time scenario and having this, gunfight be the climax. And then he was informed by someone else that his story sounded really similar to a short story called Tin Star. So he went and read that, thought it was interesting and pretty close, so he bought the rights to Tin Star in order to keep writing his own thing. And originally, it was an allegory about the United Nations. And, you can see that in all these townspeople essentially representing different countries trying to decide what's best for the group, essentially. And then in the middle of working on it, it's 1951, he is subpoenaed by the House Un-American Activities Committee because it turns out he has some communist ties that don't look very good. And he refuses to name names, so he is blacklisted. And there was a bit of a spat between him and Stanley Kramer, to my understanding, because of this, because Kramer had been involved already, but it seemed like he didn't really know about the communist part of it, and that was going to come and bite him. He eventually claimed that Carl Foreman actually sort of threatened him with outing Kramer for some communist ties in front of the committee, and that caused a rift later on with a lot of back and forth about who should get credit for what and who wrote more of the movie and so on, which is a familiar topic to us by now with these movies. And there was even an entire documentary made about this. Actually, two different documentaries from both sides in the last 20 years or so, trying to figure out what the origins of the story were. But suffice to say, Carl Foreman ended up turning this into what he felt was an allegory about the Red Scare and all of these Americans being dragged up in front of the committee and facing this choice of, like, do I go in front of them? Do I name names? Should I just leave now? What is the best for me and my family? And he worked in a lot of the objections that he had heard personally into the dialogue of the townsfolk about things like, I have a wife and kids to think about. Maybe it would be easier if I just left to Europe, something like that. And presumably Foreman felt that it was, in fact, important to stand up for what you believed in, and at the very least, not name any names. Did you happen to read anything about that backstory that you wanted to add?
I was like sort of tangentially familiar with that. One thing that struck me as I was watching this was, like, I could see the case that conservatives would also be enamored with this movie for the same reason of, like, oh, this is an individual standing up for honor and principles, despite the fact that society wants to talk around it, even though there's a clear right thing to do.
Yeah, I understand that too.
So if you didn't know who wrote it, I could see how you would walk away with that conclusion.
That makes sense.
Famously, John Wayne apparently turned down the role because of the political commentary, and I wonder if it had been written by someone more conservative, if he would have said, yes, this movie is about a man with principles standing up for what he believes in. He
actually, he was quoted in an interview as saying, this is the most un-American movie I've seen in my life.
In that it's not full of explosions and chase scenes, yes, I agree.
Yeah, and so he ended up going on to make eventually the movie Rio Bravo in direct response to High Noon in a way. And I have yet to see that movie, but my understanding is that he...
It's the same movie. with some of the names changed.
Quite possibly. I would imagine that it has more in the way of explosions, if you will, and sort of, good old-fashioned shootouts kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, obviously people seem to gel with it because, again, it made, like, a crazy amount of money back.
Yeah. Yep.
And people seem to really enjoy it. To me, this is almost like a stage play.
Sure.
Until the end, when it absolutely is not.
It would be quite difficult, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. It takes place in a single location. It's quite self-contained. It takes place in real time.
It's extremely dialogue driven.
Right. Yep.
And it's probably for the best that John Wayne turned this down, because there's no way he could have done this role.
It's definitely very hard to imagine.
Gary Cooper's, they're not even on the same level.
Yeah.
Wayne and Cooper. I'm sorry, but John Wayne has an entirely undeserved reputation as an actor. He was in a lot of movies. John Wayne is kind of the Nicolas Cage of his day. That's sort of unfair to Nicolas Cage, actually, because when that guy's on, he's on. But John Wayne was extremely one note his entire life.
Yeah,
we both really liked him in The Searchers, but that's because
Right.
he's playing a character of a guy who sucks real bad.
right. Yeah, he's practically the villain.
He's basically the villain of The Searchers, which is probably why he does such a good performance in it.
Yeah.
Because John Wayne, also as a human being, also kind of sucked.
From what I've heard. So I wanted to point out, actually, that in real life, I thought a lot of the people working on this movie, their individual political affiliations were interesting to me, considering what the movie is about. Because, well, on the side, you've got John Wayne, who we were just talking about. He is an extreme super patriot, anti-communist. He was the head of the Motion Picture Association, I believe it was called, which was an anti-communist Hollywood organization that sent a bunch of friendly witnesses to the committee to try and suss out all these communists. And so you'd think that maybe Gary Cooper was close to the opposite end of that, but it turns out Cooper himself was actually a conservative Republican who was really good friends with John Wayne. And he had just done The Fountainhead only a couple years before as the star, which, of course, is a famous libertarian movie.
He plays the fountain.
Indeed. And its head.
He's that versatile.
Yeah. This is one of his later movies. I guess I'll just mention as an aside. But then Lloyd Bridges, who played the younger guy who was gunning for Marshall, it turned out, I was reading just before the movie, that right around the time of the shooting of High Noon, Lloyd Bridges was called before the committee and blacklisted for a short time because he was a founding member of the Actors Laboratory Theater in Hollywood, and that theater was accused of having all of these serious communist ties. And it must not have been very long, because he was working, he did a movie in 51, and then he had this in 52, and so on. But he apparently couldn't work until he came in and renounced his membership in the Actors Laboratory Theater, and he served as a cooperative witness to the committee, which I assume mean that he brought up some names that they could go investigate. But it's interesting that considering the movie he was in and the part that he played in it, that in real life he would turn coat like that, I guess. Yeah,
it just goes to show you that your individual political beliefs don't necessarily reflect on the characters you play or what projects you're in. At least as an actor, it is hard to separate, like we said, this movie from the political beliefs of the people involved at a very high level. But again, I could see a conservative writing this exact movie and having the exact same scenario involved, because it is about a rugged individual doing what they think is right, and damn the consequences. It's also interesting that the people involved with this created such similar movies with Cyrano de Bergerac, which is again about a very individualistic man who lives his life according to principles and nothing else, and Bridge Over the River Kwai, which is also kind of another great man movie.
Yep, which is by Foreman as well, written by him. Well, I think I'm.
I don't have anything interesting to say about this movie because it's all praise. And also,
yeah, that's why we're at a loss for words.
And also that there's not how do I put this? It really wears its heart on the sleeve. It's
Yeah.
not, we watched Citizen Kane and Third Man, which I would say are somewhat more complex films. And that has more to do with, maybe that has more to do with genre. Westerns are not really complicated films. This is just
Right.
a
Not
film
usually.
about satisfying honor. And there's also practical considerations. Like, I believe him when he says, I would just have to leave every other town that I went to because this gang will find me.
Yeah. There's actually a quote I saw, I can't remember who it was from, but it basically said that High Noon was the first adult Western, in that it really addressed these sort of high-minded themes of philosophy and politics rather than just being a straight shoot-'em-up, as it were.
Sure, but even then, it's not particularly complicated
No.
morally. Everyone makes their positions very clear throughout the feature.
Yes. I guess not to say that it's adult in like a complex fashion, but just that the themes of the movie, they're less of a cartoon, essentially, of like, well, you
absolutely.
got the good guys and the bad guys, and the good guys win.
Well, and the bad guy is also doing something solely because he said he would. He made a promise that he has to keep. He's going to kill this guy.
Right.
And he said that 5 years ago. He's come into town just to do this. So it is sort of like a collision of two honor-bound people.
Yeah, I could see that, and I liked that, rather than just leaving it at, well, he's a crazy murderer, that there is at least that extra layer of him also having principles in a way. And even, as you pointed out, some of the townspeople saying, we actually had it better when the gang was running the town.
Yeah, like it wasn't a home for, it wasn't, I think at church they say it wasn't a place for good, decent people, but on the other hand, the hotel owner and like the train station people both said this place had a lot more business when the gang ran the town. So an early example of like, we should have this absolute villain running around because he's good for the economy.
Yeah. And then conversely, Lon Chaney pointing out, if I remember right, if you do a great job as a marshal, you're going to die penniless in the street, having been shot, presumably. Or not penniless, but very poor, because the only rich marshals are on the take.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of like other Westerns to compare this to when I read about that idea that it was the first adult Western. And so I looked up some dates, and it really is right at the beginning of a string of really great Westerns. And I know there was a revival of sorts for the Western around the 50s and 60s. But you've got, at minimum, you've got Seven Samurai in 1954. I know that's not technically a Western, but it did help.
It's a Western.
Yeah, it set the stage for a lot of things. And I think had some similarities to High Noon in the sense of, one person trying to rally people around him in order to go face the invading enemy. Then you got the Searchers, 1956. Rio Bravo, you could say, 1959. Magnificent Seven, based on Seven Samurai in 1960. And I can kind of see...
Yojimbo, if we're going to go that route.
That's true. Yeah, a lot of those Kurosawa movies coming out in the 50s. And I think I can see how High Noon would have set the stage to some extent. And sort of... I mean, I don't know how directly influential it was, but like given permission to these creators to say, hey, wait a minute, maybe we can tell more complex stories with these.
Yeah, it's a Western that has a little bit more meat on the bones than most of the stuff that came before.
Right. So technically, what did you think about the cinematography, the music, all that kind of stuff?
Well, I wanted to start with the music. I'm really impressed by how mostly I don't know enough about like music theory and stuff to necessarily address this, but it seemed to be like 1 beat per second, which really drives home this theme of there is a clock winding down this whole time.
Right. Yeah.
Which I really liked. I
didn't notice
a lot of
times.
a lot of times the score actually starts when there's a slow zoom in on the clock. This happens a lot.
Yeah.
In the film. And it seemed to be basically a beat per second, this very relentless sort of forward motion.
I didn't connect the music to the clocks, but I did notice that's how much of a recurring motif that was showing even if it was in the background, there were just clocks everywhere, very prominently showing you, how many minutes you've got until noon. Ending up in that sequence where the music was really swelling, and you had it was the final minute before noon when the pendulum is swinging and counting down, and you had all those close-up shots of each of the main characters.
All the people who've let him down. Right.
And they all, that's the moment that they all hear the whistle of the train coming.
Yep.
And that was just in a way I would say that the clocks and the music were really building up to that moment. Of course, that's the name of the movie, High Noon.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus there's that crane shot where it's just him in the town, and he's just wandering down the main street and looking around, and he's completely alone.
Yeah, it really is.
You basically don't see anyone else for the rest of the movie. It's like the people have just dried up and vanished.
Leaving him to face almost certain death.
Yeah, in a modern Western, you would see people like closing the shutters or something that. But there's nothing about that here. It's almost like a supernatural thing happening where he's just like, it's just him and these gangsters and his wife are the only people left in the world.
Yeah.
It's kind of it was giving me actually like Twilight Zone vibes a bit.
Okay. Yeah.
And a little bit because there are just a buck wild number of Twilight Zones that are set in the Wild West. More than you think, John. It's more than you think.
I believe you. I was I couldn't quite fashion it into a great argument, but I, about halfway through, started thinking that the villain of the movie, Frank Miller, he serves as almost a metaphor for death, in the sense that most of this movie essentially has the main character working up to facing his own mortality.
I think, I would zoom out a little bit and say he's more a stand-in for sort of like time and inevitability.
Yeah, and part of the reason that I thought of that was that in the way that all of these other people around him, even his closest loved ones, turn away from him, I thought that worked in the sense of in the end, like, you really are the only person who can face that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was a nice, I'm probably digging a little hard here, but I like that extra layer.
In a way, everyone kind of faces this alone.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah. Cinematography-wise, I was really impressed, particularly in the latter half of the movie. I thought it got a little more inventive, like that crane shot that you mentioned, which had to be like 50 feet up in the air kind of a thing. You don't see that too often, where they go from the ground all the way up.
Yeah.
Now it would be done by a drone, of course.
Yeah, but certainly in movies at that time.
Right. And I thought there was really great use of shadow in the movie.
They start using that more, which it makes the last act of the movie feel like a completely different genre.
It does, in a way, yeah.
Which does, reinforce this. It's not literally supernatural, but this idea that there is sort of a mystical conflict being played out here by having such intensely different lighting and camera work.
Yeah. And interesting that he managed to pull that off. He being the cinematographer who I looked up, his name is Floyd Crosby. This was actually his most well-known movie out of about 100 movies in his career.
God, the studio system was something else. Wasn't
They really cranked him out. But yeah, the whole movie is in the middle of the day in a Western town where there's not a lot of places to hide from daylight, and yet he manages to so effectively use all of these really harsh shadows in that final gunfight.
With natural light.
With natural lighting, yeah. Just taking advantage of the buildings around him and creative camera angles and staging of the actors. Especially, I'm not sure exactly why, but I remember commenting to you that one shot of Gary Cooper emerging from a shadow as he was hiding around the corner from the guys.
Yeah.
That was just really striking, and like you said, almost out of a different movie, which I applaud. That was very cool.
Mm-hmm. I just want to touch on that gunfight just again real quick.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, it struck me as so that gunfight in opposition to like the Clint Eastwood movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking specifically of Pale Rider,
Okay.
where he's up against he's hopelessly outnumbered against people, but he deals with them almost casually.
Yeah.
He just murders his way out of this situation. Whereas in real life, I do not want to face 4 people with guns. That seems extremely dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a good shot. He's brave. He's physically fit. We've already seen him like beat up a much younger guy.
But we also saw him almost break down just before coming out. When he had his head on the desk in the marshal's office.
Yeah, I was just taking a little nap.
Sorry, go on.
But he's all these things. He's sober, which is an important
True.
thing because he turns down a couple deputies because they're too drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he does get a couple volunteers, but they're all either unfit or like that one guy that would have helped him said, "Wait a minute, this ain't the way you said it was going to be."
Yeah.
It can't just be the 2 of us. It's we already talked about it being realistic, but there's a very real sense of danger. The whole movie has built up, but how dangerous these guys are, and how inevitable this is. I know it's a Western, so the hero's supposed to come out on top, but I really felt like he was in danger that whole time. There is that thing where he's cornered, and he's got people on either side of him, and it seems like it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And you're going, how's he going to get out of this one?
Mm-hmm. It definitely built the suspense in a good way. I liked just as a tiny note, I remember when his wife, Amy, comes back. She gets off the train, and she goes to the marshal's office and is looking out the window. They set that up in a great way where, because of the angle, she's looking out the window on the left side of the screen, and in the foreground is a gun that had been his deputy's gun that was
the
left
other deputy's
earlier.
gun. Yeah,
and it's pointing straight out the door. It's like, oh, okay. If you're savvy, you're going to notice that like she's going to take that gun and start
it's a nice
out.
payoff.
It was, yeah, and unusual in a way. Just having a woman get involved, really, as far as Westerns go. Apparently that really divided critics of having his wife be the one who comes and saves the day.
Yeah, I was going to say there was contemporary criticism about that too, right?
Right.
And I wonder if that's just genre criticism of, well,
it's not what they expected. Yeah.
This isn't what I want out of a Western. But no one else is going to do this, and no one else swore vows to help him. Right.
Yeah. And she even, not just comes out as a crack shot or anything. She has to shoot a man in the back who's not even expecting it, which, if you're going to go against your Quaker ideals, that's about the most hard way you could do it, which I find, impressive in those little details like that.
Well, she converted. She even talks about that. Her
because her family was killed. Yeah, her dad.
Yeah, her family was killed, but like her brothers were gunslingers, and I think she grew up around guns. She converted to Quakerism.
Yeah.
After seeing them get killed, and she even says they were on the right side of the law too, and that didn't help him at all.
Right. Well, and then she had that line, I don't care who's right or who's wrong. I just think that there ought to be a better way for people to live.
Yeah. And it's interesting how much the film talks about, like, well, the moral thing would be to not do any of this.
Right, to just leave and keep leaving.
It makes that pretty clear.
Yeah.
Because the pastor doesn't have a right answer. Everyone in church says, people still need killing, and we hire people to do that for us. And I don't know what the what that says about people, but I guess it's that Western implication of you still need men like Marshall Kane on the frontier, which is sort of what every Western winds up being about.
Right, that sort of that moral ambiguity that starts infecting all the Westerns.
Yeah, and it's sort of, well, there's going to be violence, so we need people who are going to do good violence. And maybe that's just a flaw in the genre. Because you see later with, like, spaghetti westerns or The Wild Bunch, where maybe there's no such thing as good violence.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think there was any... I'm trying to think of anything past that, but it feels like maybe we haven't really got anything just because the Western died out so much.
Past that with what?
Like thematically. Like you
I guess Unforgiven.
The Coen Brothers remake?
No, that was True Grit.
Right? Oh, I'm sorry.
True Grit is also a fantastic film, and I'd recommend it.
Okay.
Where the heroine deliberately goes out to find like the worst sumbitch she can possibly come up with to go avenge her father, because she needs someone who's capable of doing a lot of murdering, because she knows she's not up to the task.
And that's how we get, ironically, is it Jeff Bridges?
Jeff Bridges, yeah.
Yeah, so, right, Lloyd Bridges' son in that one.
Oh, I did not know they were related.
I'm going to look it up right now just so I don't make a fool of myself on my own podcast.
believe you. But no, Unforgiven's the Clint Eastwood, I think from the 90s Western, where some prostitutes hire this aging gunslinger to avenge one of their number.
Gotcha. Okay, I can confirm Lloyd Bridges, father of four, including Bo and Jeff Bridges.
All right, you heard it here first, folks. Or
surely heard it here first.
That's correct. And
this must come as a shock to everybody. I was trying to remember, was that Lloyd Bridges or was that Leslie Nielsen that had that line?
I have no idea.
In
Airplane?
In Airplane, yeah.
Was Lloyd Bridges in Airplane?
Yeah, that is him. Yep.
What? I just said that because it's funny.
No, he was in Airplane. He was the
Get right out of town.
I'm trying to remember. It was a short part. I remember him standing on the tarmac as he's quite old at that point. Here we go. Tower Supervisor Steve McCroskey.
Who said the "Don't call me Shirley" line though?
I believe that was Nielsen.
Okay.
On the plane.
It doesn't matter. We're not.
It really doesn't.
We've come way off high noon, and that's only because, again, I got nothing bad to say about this movie. I guess we should talk about the big question.
Yeah, really, that brings us to just our final takeaway here, as usual, which is this movie worthy of being in the Criterion Collection? Do we think it is important?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say the political stuff around it alone, the context around it makes it important, and that this is a really, really good Western. And calling it, I think, the first adult Western, as you said, does something to indicate how important it is and significant.
Yeah, both a success in its day and influential, obviously, which is, I don't know that we've had that so far.
No, it's hardly a subversion of Western tropes, but it does examine some of the ideas behind the even less morally complicated Westerns that came before it.
And I would say, I personally would have to also say, yes, it belongs in the collection, not just for the reasons you said, but even just knowing that it was one of the first 25 films selected for preservation by the U.S. government. Not that they're like the perfect arbiters of taste, but I think that says something about how influential this movie really was. Yeah,
absolutely. That they started making a list of 25 films and everyone said this should be on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good indicator. Mm-hmm. Well, with that, thank you so much for being on the show again. And
my pleasure.
Presumably, we will see you next time as well for the Magnificent Ambersons.
Oh, okay, finally.
Yeah, when we once again get to talk about just how absurd of a man Orson Welles could be.
let's discover the growing lies of Orson Welles.
Together, indeed. All right, well, thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, have a good one.